Hey everyone, Renee here. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about all of my least favorite books of 2022. The ones I DNF'd, the ones I didn't like, the ones I very strongly didn't like. So here we go. So in my last video, I talked about all of the best books that I read in 2022, and there were some amazing highlights. So if you're more in the positive vein, definitely go check that out. I'll have it linked below. But this video is on the more negative side. And just a disclaimer, this is me talking about books that I didn't like. So you know what you're getting when you click on this video, and no hard feelings. It's just there are some books I read this year that really just didn't do it for me. And if you really liked them, I'm sorry. No offense to you, no offense to the author. It's not you, it's me. First up, we're gonna start with the books that I actually DNF'd. I DNF'd, I believe, 4 books this year. The first one being My Killer Vacation by Tessa Bailey, which is so sad to me because I love Tessa Bailey, but there was something about this book, I couldn't do it. I couldn't get through it. This is essentially like a romance mystery thriller about this woman who goes to stay at this Airbnb and finds like a body in the attic. And then obviously you have this like hot detective who's supposed to be on the case, but honestly, he's a bit misogynistic. Maybe a lot. I don't know, because I didn't read too far into it. I think I got to page like 80 or something like that. Like not even halfway through, but I just was not liking it. The mystery aspect was not good. And I just don't think that Tessa Bailey should write something like this again. I think she should stick to small town rom-coms. I would love that from her. Another book that I DNF'd, unfortunately, because I had really high expectations for this, was Tender as the Flesh. This is a book that took me a long time to read because I was really intimidated by the concept, but it was a concept that I thought that I would really like. This book takes place in a world where animal meat has become toxic to humans, so the government legalizes the consumption of human meat. And that sounds disgusting, but it also sounds very thought-provoking. It sounds like it could tie closely to today's society, and it just sounded like a really interesting and gripping concept to read. However, the execution of it, and I don't know if I'm alone on this because I feel like a lot of people I've seen really like this, I don't think it was very well executed. I was quite bored. The writing was interesting, but it didn't go in the direction that I wanted it to go in. There were these side plots that I definitely did not want, but I'm not gonna say what it was. And it felt very flat for me. I don't know. I had to keep putting this down halfway because mentally I wasn't ready for it, I don't think, because some of the stuff still was obviously pretty disturbing, but also I was bored. And I don't know how you can be disturbed and bored at the same time, and that's where I say that I just don't think this was well executed, in my opinion. So I didn't finish it. I got about halfway through. Another DNF that we have is The Never King. The author slips me, but I read this on my Kindle, and it's a Peter Pan retelling. It's a dark romance. It wasn't doing it for me. There were just some things that happened where I kind of couldn't separate the Peter Pan from what was going on in the story, and it just wasn't very interesting to me. I felt like it had a plot, but the plot wasn't that great. And honestly, I don't really know what else to say about this book other than it just wasn't for me. I wasn't vibing with it. And that's not to say that I don't like Peter Pan retellings, because I read Hooked this year as well, and absolutely loved that one. And then finally, the last DNF that I can think of that I finished this year, I am so sorry. If you watched my best videos of the year, you know that there is some stuff coming about a certain author, and it's not that I don't like the author, but the book that I DNF'd is Maybe Someday by Colleen Hoover. Oh, I hated everything about this book. I think this is one of the most idiotic concepts that I've ever read, and I am so sorry if you liked it. I know that this book is well loved. I know Colleen Hoover is well loved. One of her books made it on my best of the year. This is no shade to Colleen, but this book, in my opinion, was literally infuriating to read. And let me tell you why. Because this book follows a girl who, in the beginning of the book, the very beginning, I don't think this is a spoiler, I think it's on the back, she gets cheated on by her boyfriend, right? right? And he cheats on her with her best friend, right? It's a very hard emotional thing for her in the very beginning of the book. She has nowhere to go because they live together, so she decides that she's gonna go live with this hot neighbor, right? Who lives across the quad in the same apartment complex, barely knows him, goes to live with him, right? And then what does she do? I don't know if this is a spoiler, so if you haven't read it, maybe skip like 20 seconds, because I'm literally not sure, but I have to say it, otherwise it won't make sense. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Get this, that boy has a girlfriend, but our main character starts to gain feelings for him, and she discovers that he has this girlfriend. She's mad about it at first, but then she's just like, I really like him. And then every single time he mentions his girlfriend, she gets mad at the situation, and then he's definitely too close to her. And it is so mind-blowing to me that your idea of a girl getting over a relationship where she was cheated on is becoming the mistress of another relationship where he's cheating on his girlfriend. Are you kidding? I don't know if it gets better. I don't care if it gets better. There's other things going on in the book, but I can't get past that original or main plot. So I DNF'd it about 40% in. No. It's no. Okay, so next we're gonna get into the books that I did finish and did not like. So the first one I'm gonna start with is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. I love Riley Sager. I really enjoy his writing. I've read most of his books at this point except for his new one, but none have made me as frustrated as this one. This came out last year, and it follows a girl who is on this college campus, and then there's these murders happening on campus, and they tell you, you know, be inside before dark, don't go off with strangers, like use a buddy system, like all of that kind of stuff. And what does she decide to do? There's no Ubers running and she really needs out of town, so she decides to ignore all those rules and get in a car with a random stranger on campus. The stuff that happens in this book is just not good in my opinion, and it's Riley Sager, so there is quite a few plot twists, and it's an unreliable narrator, so you never fully know what's going on, and I do really enjoy that aspect of it, but the plot twist at the end and just what was going on and the logic that was used, I just could not get with. The whole time I was like, oh, you're just stupid, like the whole entire time. It wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. But Mr. Riley Sager, I do love you, and I cannot wait to read your newest book. Then another one that I didn't like is actually one of the more recent ones I read, and that is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh. I have been putting this off for a while, and I didn't know why, because I was like, this is the ultimate hot girl book, the ultimate cool girl book, sad girl book, whatever, like I have to read it. So I finally read it, and if this is what the cool girls are reading, I don't want to be cool. Some of it was okay, but ultimately I just didn't like this at all. The main character was super unlikable, which is fine. I usually am okay with unlikable characters, and in a concept like this, I understand why she would be like that. This book follows our main character, who is a rich 20-something-year-old woman going through life, and she's very unhappy, and she's going through a very chronic depression. And I do understand mental illness and what it does to people. I've had my own battles with it in the past. However, the way that this character acted, I do not care what the reasoning is. She was just a bad person. There were some things that she did in this book that just crossed a line for me, and it's like, you cannot even pin that on how you're feeling. Like why would that even pop into your head? Like, oh my god, I did not like her at all. And the overall premise of it sounded interesting. If I didn't say it, she decides to medicate herself into a year-long sleep, which is where you get My Year of Rest and Relaxation. But I just couldn't stand the main character. I could not deal with it. And then the end was so awful. Like, out of all of the ways that you could have ended this book, and I'm not even talking about the last page. We're not even gonna get into the last page, because that, I literally wanted to throw it at that point. But the overall end, the overcoming of, you know, what she was going through, if you can even call it overcoming, just her coming out of this rest, in my opinion, was so anticlimactic, so lackluster, literally didn't make me feel any different. I wanted to come into this book and be like, oh my god, I'm gonna discover something about myself and this is gonna be really meaningful. It wasn't. It wasn't at all. And it wasn't worth reading to the end. Awful. Next, we're gonna move into another book that I don't own, and I'm sorry once again to the Colleen Hoover stans, but it is Confess by Colleen Hoover. I did read this book in its entirety, and I did dislike this book in its entirety. This book I don't think was as bad as Maybe Someday, clearly because I finished it, but I was reading with the intention of it getting better because I saw the reviews and they were all really great, and it was a good Reader's Choice winner for whatever year it came out, 2015 or something like that. It didn't get better. In fact, it actually got more annoying. This book follows our main character who is trying to reconnect with her daughter. This might be a poor synopsis, but she got pregnant at a young age. Her daughter is being looked after by the father's parents because the father is no longer in the picture for reasons that, you know, you'll see if you read it. And she's trying to reconnect with her daughter. So she's doing everything she can. She's getting a job, getting her own apartment, getting her life together. And she meets this guy at this shop or building, whatever it is, where he makes art off of people's confessions. So people will write a confession on a piece of paper and slip it into a slot, and he'll make an art over that confession. It's a great concept, actually, like what he's doing. I think it would be cool to have like a literary fiction book just based off of what he does. First off, it's insta-love, okay? Insta-love, but like frustrating insta-love, because the whole time she's like, I can't be here with you, I can't be doing this, blah 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 blah, and then like 2 minutes later she's like knocking on his door and then complaining that she shouldn't be doing this as she's doing it, which I understand is like great for people if you like the almost like the forbidden love type of story, even though it's really not. It's just her being annoying. But also it's like the guy was low-key not attractive either. Like not even how he was described physically, just how he acted. And maybe it's because I listened to this on audiobook, but the male narrator kind of reminded me of Joe Goldberg from the show You, and it was really creepy. And then the more I read, the more I realized that he was a little creepy. He was always there, which is, I know some people would love that, like, oh my god, he cares about her so much. But as I was reading this, I was like, no, that's really weird, like leave her alone. And it was like she would get all bent out of shape and like threaten everything that she's worked for over this guy she's known for like 2 hours. I'm sorry, I didn't like it at all. So that being said, that is my Colleen Hoover slander of the video. Disclaimer to the Colleen Hoover fans, I do like Colleen Hoover books, just not these two. Okay, so now we are getting into the last book, the worst book that I read this year, my only 1-star this year. The book is No Longer Human by Osama Desai. I forget when this book was originally published, sometime in the 1900s, I think the 40s or 70s. I don't know, an odd number is sticking out to me in the 1900s, but I can't confirm right now. This book I went into with a lot of high expectations. This book follows our main character who is severely depressed, and it leads to his attempt of suicide, and it's pretty much the story of his life and what he goes through throughout his life, right? And it's really sad because this is actually the last book, I believe, the last book that this author ended up writing and publishing because he took his own life. So a lot of people say that this is his last like note or stuff like that, and it's really sad, and I really was focusing on that when I was reading this. But at the end of the day, a bad book is a bad book, and this is a book, out of all of the books on here, I want to be the most sensitive when I'm critiquing. But the main reason that I didn't like this book is just because the main character was so painfully misogynistic. As a woman, I was extremely frustrated reading this book, and it took any type of empathy that I could have given away from this experience reading this book. There were times when I started to feel an ounce of sadness for our main character, and it was immediately shredded away by the insistent need to shit on women throughout this entire book. I know that some people will argue that I missed the point, and I know that some people will argue that this book was written in like the 40s or something. That's how it was back then. But all that being said, it doesn't make it any more enjoyable to read. It doesn't make it any better of a book for me. And I hate to say that given the background of this book, but I didn't feel sad. I only felt frustration. And honestly, I did find it a bit repetitive. I don't think the writing was as good as it could have been, and maybe it's because it's a classic and I'm not used to reading classics, but I swear I literally did not ever want to hear the word clown or clownish or clownery or clowning ever again in my life. I swear I need to go back and count how many times a version of that word was written in this book. It was just a lot. It was more than Sarah J Maas saying he loosed a breath. It was insane. But that is all of the books that I wanted to rant about. Those are the books that I did not like this year. So yeah, that's the list. Here's to reading more books I don't like in 2023, but also here's to finding books that are new 5 stars, new discoveries, and overall good times. So I'm really excited for what I'm gonna read in 2023, regardless of the ones that I didn't quite like as much or don't quite like as much. So yeah, if you like this video, don't forget to thumbs up down below to help support this channel, and also hit subscribe to follow me on my reading journey. You know this drill. And all my socials will also be down below: Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads, the works. And yeah, once again, I hope you like this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.